Hello, I'm Executive Chef Joseph Schutzer. Welcome to our kitchen. Today I'd like to share with you another one of my favorite Hungarian desserts, Rigo. The country of Hungary is filled with so much amazing history, from kings, castles, wars, tons of history. So why shouldn't this dessert be part of history as well? Quick story about the history of this dessert. It's named after a gypsy violinist, Rigo, born 1858, deceased 1927, who happened to marry a woman named Clara Ward. She was born in Detroit, Michigan. And when he met her, did I mention that she was also crowned the Princess de Caraman-Chimay, who was married to Prince Joseph in Belgium? Well, as the story goes, in 1869, Rigo was performing in a restaurant in Paris. The princess and her husband were dining at that restaurant, and apparently love at first sight. Story goes as she had got up from her table, removed her wedding band, and put it in Rigo Yanci's hand. Later that year, they eloped and were married for several years after that. Talk about some Hollywood drama going on with that, and that's in the 1800s. So. Well, what is the dessert? It is 2 layers of chocolate sponge cake with a chocolate cream topped with a ganache. So join me now as I show you how to make this amazing dessert. To begin, as with any sponge cake, we're going to take our egg whites. Let's put them into a mixing bowl. Make certain that the egg whites are very cold. You will yield better peaks and a much stiffer airy substance if you're going to have cold eggs. So at this point, we're going to go ahead, start it on slow speed, build its way up. As it starts to come together, turn it to high speed, continue to beat or whip until soft peaks have been achieved. So here we are. Right now, we don't have really the soft peaks, but we're kind of frothy a little there. A little bit soft and runny, which is fine. Let's go ahead and put our bowl back in. We're gonna go ahead, continue whipping, and let's add some of the sugar. So I like to add a little bit, and then give it a chance to incorporate, and then I will continue adding it little by little. There we go. What I'm going to do is I'm gonna continue whipping 1 more minute, and then I'm gonna add my egg yolks one at a time. Here we are. Nice and airy. So now what I'm going to do is transfer this to a larger bowl, and we're going to fold in our flour and cocoa powder. So now at this time, I will take my flour. I'm using cake flour. Also the cacao powder and baking powder has already been sifted, and then I added some kosher salt after. So what I do is I'll go in batches, like 1/3, and then gently fold everything together.
Does the quality of the cocoa powder matter?
Absolutely. I'm using a Noel Extra Brut. The cacao powder is actually so dark, it actually looks red. It is really amazing stuff and great flavor, and it really makes things dark. So you could use a milk chocolate, or you could melt your chocolate instead of using cacao powder, but that's up to you, whatever you're most comfortable with. So here we are. We're all mixed in pretty good. If you find a little dry patches like that, that is not going to hurt anything. Because you're making a sponge cake or a genoise, it's best to not overwork it. The whole dynamic of that cake is it to be light and airy. So if you overwork it, you really risk deflating it. we will grab our sheet pans lined with parchment paper, and let's go ahead and split this in half. As you see, I'm doing this with 2 sheet pans. You will see a lot of other recipes out there where they use 1 pan and you're cutting it in half. However, we have to make some for friends we're having a get together. So with the way that I'm doing it, this is going to yield 20 portions. So we make sure that we have enough for everyone and a little left over. So at this time, we're just going to smooth this out nice and level. Take it all the way to the ends. All right, so now that we have it pretty level, pretty even, we're going to go ahead and place this into a preheated oven, 350 degrees Fahrenheit. And we're going to bake it for about 12 minutes or so. Test it at that point. It could vary from 12 to 16 minutes, depending on the oven that you have. So now we're going to let these sit for about 5 minutes, and then we're going to turn them out onto the cooling rack out of the pans and allow them to cool completely. So while our sponge cakes are cooling down, let's bloom our gelatin. The way I do mine is I typically use whatever grams of gelatin in weight, 5 times that in the water weight. And then I like to sprinkle it across the water like so. Make certain that it's cold water or room temperature water. You do not want hot water for gelatin when you're blooming it anyway. So what happens is we're gonna let this sit 10-15 minutes. And once the gelatin blooms, then we need to heat it. And when you heat it, you do not want to boil the water. We could do it into the microwave, and then it'll dissolve into liquid, and your water will just be will be gelatinous water. And that's what we're looking for. Well, now we're gonna work with our first piece. This is gonna be the top. So what I'll do is I take my mold, and I'm gonna put it in there, and I'll press down on it. I will then take a knife and just score the inside. So now we have that off of there. Let's get this out of here. Let's pick this up. Let's remove our paper. Now what we want to do is we're going to take our mold and we're going to press down on it. Make sure that any of the excess on the outside edges we could remove, and just to square it off and make it more presentable. So now for the top piece, we're going to pour our melted chocolate on. What I did was I melted mine over a water bath and tempered it. You could use a microwave if you wanted to. That's completely up to you. I'm just more comfortable with tempering. So now, let's get all this in there. And now take our offset spatula and let's cover the top of our sponge cake. So here we go. We have our top covered and smoothed out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to transfer this to the cooler, and we're going to allow this to set for maybe about 10-15 minutes. We're then going to cut it in portions. So in our for the filling, in our mixing bowl, we have the cold heavy cream that just came from the fridge. And now I'm going to add my powdered sugar and cacao powder. What I'm going to do is I always take the whisk and I'm going to incorporate it a little bit here by hand, simply because when I put the power to it, I don't want it to fly everywhere, the dust. So do this, kind of helps you a little bit. Scrape the sides a little, and now go ahead and hook up to the machine. Start off on low speed until everything gets incorporated and you start to see the viscosity of the heavy cream thicken up. And then you can increase the speed. So here we are now at soft peaks. This is the time we want to add our gelatin. So after we bloomed the gelatin into cold water, I microwaved it for 30 seconds and then went again for another 15 seconds. And you allow it to cool a little bit. See, it's still liquidy, but yet it's cooled down so it doesn't melt the heavy cream. So let's add this to our whipped topping. Well, essentially will be a mousse. And then now, let's go back at it. Get this through there. And now we're gonna whip it on high speed until stiff peaks. And there you go. Nice, firm whipped topping. So now that we have our whipped cream, our mousse done, let's go ahead and pour it into our mold. So now let's push this in and go ahead and smooth this out. Nice even layer all the way around the cake. Cover the entire bottom. So now that we got this in here, what I do is I do this. I'm gonna push a little bit to center it. I'm not gonna go all the way to the edge. I'll show you why. So that just gives me an idea of how thick it's going to be. So now what I do, you can do this with parchment paper, plastic or whatever, is I'm going to take my acetate sheets and I'm going to put this inside the mold, and this is my barrier. And this is gonna help keep everything from sticking to the sides. Push it tight to the corners. Make certain that it's down all the way and your cake is pushing it out. I've actually cut it, I measured it, so I got it cut pretty well. But what I could do is run a little piece of tape here just to make sure that it doesn't come apart. Now we have our protective acetate in. Go ahead and start filling your cake with the mousse. All right, there we go. Looking pretty even over here. Some extra there. Okay. So now, let's shift our attention back to the top piece. Or here's a little tip. So I'm cutting mine into 20 pieces, 5x4. So to get the accurate size, how would you do that? So what I would do is this. I take a piece of parchment paper that's obviously the same size as our cake. I'm gonna fold it in quarters, lengthwise. That gives us our 4 pieces, right? Okay, so now I'm going to do this. I'm going to fold this piece up, figuring if this is 1/5 of it, these are 4/5. 4/5, fold it in half. Then I look at this, maybe a little further up, like so. Fold it, fold this in half, and now in half. We now have our parchment in 20 pieces. These are the size of your 20 cuts. Okay, so I'm gonna take some hot water, run it over my knife, and then I'm going to cut lengthwise in half. So now that our top has set and we got our pieces or portions cut, take an offset spatula and let's go ahead and transfer it to the top of the cake. what I do is keep them in the same position they're in, simply because, you know, it's already cut symmetrical. So here we are at the end. What I did was, because some of the chocolate overflowed on the sides, you'll have to trim the edges a little bit. Not a big deal. At the end of the day, this is handmade, not machine made, so there's bound to be some imperfection. And then there, like towel work at our last piece. So I press it down, try to make it a little leveler. Be careful because your hands are warm, you don't want to fingerprint it. Now we're going to put it into the cooler for a minimum 4 to 8 hours. We want to ensure that everything sets. So now we're going to cut it. Let's take our knife, soaking in hot water, wipe off the excess. By getting it hot, it's going to enable us to cut nice and clean through the mousse. You don't want it to be too hot. If it gets too hot, then it's really gonna melt and become really sloppy. So let's go through it again, make it sure. Make a little movement on it, try to pull it apart. Now with an offset spatula, let's get our under there. And we place it on our plate. Well, there you have Rigo Yanchi. It's such a wonderful dessert. The way that I did it is close to traditional. However, when you're at the cukrazda or the patisseries in Hungary, you're gonna find that a lot of the pastry chefs now, on top of the chocolate mousse, they're putting a white or a vanilla whipped topping, and then the top layer of sponge cake, and then the ganache. It adds a nice little, another color to the mix, and also it's a nice addition. It actually makes it look really attractive. I didn't want to do that. I just wanted to kind of be a little closer to the original. But doing some research and some reading from one of my favorite Hungarian restaurateurs and authors, the late George Lang, according to him, he said the original actually had a layer of apricot jelly somewhere in the mix, which I think would be incredible on this dish, to be honest with you. Next time I make it, I'm going to incorporate that in there somehow, whether it's within the sponge cake or on the bottom layer of sponge. Maybe I put the lekvar, the apricot lekvar jelly there, then the mousse, and then maybe another one on the top layer. I don't know. We'll figure it out. In Hungary also, traditionally, it literally is just served this way on the plate. But feel free to incorporate berries somehow, you know, raspberries. They're nice and tart, and I would cut the richness through this. Whether you just did fresh berries or if you made a raspberry coulis or something from it, I think would be really nice with it. Maybe even shaved chocolate on it, whatever. So that's all I have. I hope you enjoyed the demonstration. Give it a shot. As I mentioned, the one that I did, my recipe will reflect this full size that I'm doing, and they were made with a standard half sheet pan. Feel free to cut the recipe in half and cut that one sponge cake into 2, and then you just make a smaller version of it. Well, thank you very much for joining. I hope you enjoyed the demonstration. Give it a shot. Let me know how it works out for you. Jó étvágyat!